Welcome to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio hour and podcast. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and we have an interesting show today. The first time that I'm actually talking on this subject on the radio and or in the air or in the podcast, and I'm very excited to be speaking to my guest today. His name is Rocky Singh Kandola. And we are going to be touching on a lot of sensitive topics today. But mainly, what I want him to answer for you is how does serving a prison sentence change your outlook in life? So, welcome, Rocky.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
All right, I'm excited to have you. Awesome. All right, so let me give you some background information on Rocky. Rocky Singh Kandola is a 33-year-old successful Indian businessman born in New York City and currently living in Los Angeles. Rocky owns a showroom in a high traffic area in the downtown area of Los Angeles. And he says, I am both a felon and a philosophy graduate. Rocky spent his high school life in 9 different facilities and boot camps around the world, some of which are now closed due to severe child abuse, rape, and torture. He has almost died at least 8 times. Half of his face and jaw are fake from attempted murder on his life. Even though he looks so very handsome now, you can't tell. He has been shot, stabbed, kidnapped, and kicked in the face, resulting in over 20 major surgeries in his adult life. And like I said, that is just basically a synopsis of Rocky's hard life that he's had. But, he's going to talk about that for a little bit, and then we're going to transition to his life in prison and what he can share with us from that experience. So, again, welcome to the show, Rocky.
So much.
Yeah, your bio was a little difficult to read. Tell our listeners your story. Maybe touch a little bit on your childhood and what happened for you to be in the boot camps, and basically, how did you get out?
Yeah, definitely. So, as you said, I spent a lot of time in different facilities and boot camps across the world. At a young age, my father, was a very traditional Indian parent. My parents both were, and then for an Indian kid, you're supposed to stay home, study, read the encyclopedia, get straight 100s, listen to everything your parents say. And I was not that little kid. I was a lot more outspoken. I was wild, carefree. I wanted to be out and about, play with friends and travel and go different places. And me and my father bumped heads very quickly at a young age. So starting around 11, I was sent, my first time to India. I spent some time there alone, living near a family. It wasn't a controlled environment, but at a young age, I really missed my family. However, I do look back on that trip and that time as a blessing because at 11 years old, 12 years old, I would, hop on a train or a bus, go across the other side of the country, not tell anybody, and play tennis tournaments and
Oh, nice.
really get infused with the culture out there. The family I lived with had they have servants in India, people like cleaning their house, and the young kid was around my age, but he's a lot smaller. And especially back then, families don't treat these kids very well. So I would take him, sneak him out, put him in my tennis bag on my backpack, and sneak him out of the house. And we would go to the chicken market and just eat like 2 kgs of chicken as much as we could and run around and play and sneak back in the house. So I do have some fond memories from that time. Yeah, so after coming back from India, however, I was sent to my first worldwide association of specialty program boot camp. Paris Hilton actually recently shed a lot of light on this in her documentary,
Yeah,
This
I
Is Me.
saw that. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
You
she
went to
really
one
got
of
into
those?
it.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I went to one of the ones that were outside of the U.S. and this was in Ensenada, Mexico. And you got to keep in mind these are for-profit businesses. They operate in very manipulative ways towards the parents as well as towards the children, in order to further their business. They even go as far as lobbying presidential campaigns and putting down donations for presidents to keep the child advocacy laws certain ways so they can continue operating. Many of them are still operating today, and many of them have changed their names. The one I went to was called Casa by the Sea. I went to this
Sounds
program.
good.
Yeah, I mean, they told your parents that you're jet skiing and
Yeah,
swimming
I
and
know, right?
medical care. Couldn't be further from the truth.
All right. Well,
At that
let me interrupt you though for a minute. So, no, Paris Hilton was sent there because she was rebellious and she didn't listen to her parents. Is that the same reason you were sent there?
Basically, yes. My father taught me how to drive at a young age. I used to
Okay.
start sneaking his car out. I got pulled over one time sneaking his car out, and the next day, instead of going to tennis camp, I was headed to boot camp in Mexico.
Ah, all right. Okay. All right.
That one. See, I didn't just wind up at these places by accident. I take full accountability. I was a wild child. I'm sure I was.
Okay.
My parents now, we have a good relationship, and they tell me that when they hear my podcast, they're like, "Hey, Rocky, like if we didn't send you there, you would have broken every single bone in your body and be dead by now." And I'm like, I'm not sure if that would have happened, but I understand you did it for a good reason. And
Right.
that's the case in almost all the cases is the parents didn't really know the trauma, the abuse, the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, the mental abuse that was going on at these facilities. And on
Wow.
top of that, they would tell the parents that, your kids are going to manipulate you, they're going to lie to you, don't listen to
Yeah.
them. Our communication was controlled. We weren't allowed to write or call home. If we wrote home saying something negative about the program, they would tear it up and make us write it again. So yeah, very regimented. As soon as you walk in, your hair is shaved, your clothes are stripped, you're sleeping on the
Wow.
ground for 10 days, you're screamed, or you're hit, you're yelled, you're forced to lay in positions on your stomach and your chin on the ground with your hands and feet tied behind your back. You're forced
Wow.
to wake up at 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, raining, and go outside and stand in the rain and count in the rain.
Oh my
All
goodness.
kind of little mental games that they play to brainwash and to kind of break a child. And it's not hard to break a child, especially at that age. People have
Wow.
different, reactions to this. Mine was basically it actually learned to serve me later in life. I learned to adapt and to
Mhm.
kind of find out how to work the system that I'm in very quickly at a very young age. And my mind just kind of shifted to that pattern of adapting and being sent in a different life and after 6 months and a different life after every 6 months of my life.
Okay, so you said you went to 8 of these facilities. So your parents kept taking you out of one and putting you into the next?
Basically, my life pattern came to be 6 months in a facility that was the closest thing to hell on earth, and then 6 months at home, where when I was at home, I felt like I was going to be sent away again anyway. So I would live the most crazy lavish life as a kid that I could. I used to steal my dad's credit card, rent 3 limos, and go to New Orleans and take all my friends with me, spend ridiculous amounts of money, and get sent to another school a couple weeks later. But I knew in my mind, I knew it was going to happen. So I was like, let me just have fun when I'm home and do
Oh
anything.
my gosh.
So
Okay, all right. So, I was expecting that you would tell me that you went to these facilities because maybe you joined a street gang or you were, you were doing bad things and then you got arrested. So, all right. So, how did the prison thing come about?
well, that all happened as well. Beyond a street gang, like we had our own little group and gang, and we were selling drugs. And this came a little bit later. We were selling drugs. We were doing everything from robbing, from stealing, to breaking into cars, to stealing from guys. Like I was heading in a criminal direction. I just didn't care for authority, for elders. I didn't have any respect for that. Obviously, at a certain point in my life, especially at a young age, when I lost the trust for those people, in my mind, I was just like, you know what? There's no one I'm going to trust. I'm not going to listen to them. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I
Mhm.
kind of dove, especially after my last boot camp at 17, when I was finally turning 18 and free. I dove headfirst into selling, doing drugs, partying, women's, literally sleeping just to wake up and party again. I had no direction, no jobs. I had multiple small jobs. Most of my work was figuring out how to sell one substance to make more and to buy more of it to sell another. Not even just illegal substance, everything from hats to shoes to CDs to anything and everything.
Okay.
So after I got out, I started college in Alabama, and I had a short run until I started getting into heavier drugs and selling heavier drugs until the federal government, the state and local police, and they all had a formed task force. And this task force followed me around for quite a bit of time until they finally had an undercover sting operation with a controlled sale of narcotics. And that's
Mhm.
when they finally arrested me, brought me in, charged me with distribution. And that
Mhm.
began a good 7 to 9 years, the rest of my life of jail, inpatient rehab, prison, electronic monitoring, and just a multitude of other, punishments and adjudications that the court puts on you at that time. Took close 7, 8 years for me to finally finish everything, get off my probation, and be not considered state property anymore, and put it behind me. And unfortunately, Alabama is one of the few states where they don't have any expungement laws. So, although it's been 10 years since my conviction, I still on my record. I really can't do much about it.
Yeah, which is one of my questions that I had here because um, you operate your own business now, and I had a feeling it had to do with probably because as a felon, you probably couldn't, find a job or, because when they do the background check. But before we go there, tell me how you transitioned from a rebellious kid, to quite an entrepreneur, apparently, with all the drugs and all the things that you were selling and, learning that business. And what made you go to school and get a degree? How did that transition happen?
So the schooling and the degree was kind of going on. I spent 7 years as a freshman in college. I spent quite a bit of time. I ended up having great grades with 3.86 GPA. I just kept dropping classes. Finally, when this happened to my jaw, I was actually picked up. You can only see a small scar now. I was picked up and thrown into a concrete sidewalk. My entire jaw was crushed. They
Oh
took
my
bone out of
gosh.
my head and put it in my mouth to build my teeth back up. Everything is kind of like partly fake and porcelain, except for our middle ones was all crushed and broken. However, when
Oh,
that happened,
that was when you're in the drug trade, because I know the drug trade is very violent. Is that what happened there?
it wasn't due to the drug trade. It was more of like the area I was in. I had a lot of people brewing a lot of jealousy towards me. At that point, I would really show off what I was having with money and cars and partying,
Okay.
girls, and I was
Okay.
dating at the time. And these rival kind of bouncers at a club that I was doing club promotions for just were jealous and ended
Okay.
up unfortunately. I don't think honestly from my heart, I don't feel like they meant to hurt me as bad as they did. They just wanted to hurt
Wow.
me a bit, and unfortunately, they threw me into a sidewalk of concrete. My face bit it, so it
Oh
ended up
my
being
goodness.
huge. I had probably 10 or 15 of my major surgeries were due directly to this injury. There's I don't even remember part of it because there's so many drugs and so much trauma. But during this time, I was still in college, and I was so hurt that I was like, you know what? I need to do something different. Let me go ahead and graduate college. So I actually sat down, focused. I started taking 18 hours per semester. And I graduated within a year and a half with a 4.0 GPA
You're
while I was
smart.
going through my injuries. And right before went to prison, actually, I went to prison right after I graduated. I applied to law school. They wouldn't let me go to law school. They wanted me to do a prison sentence because I was still smoking weed. I was still disobeying the law. I wasn't really listening. I was still rebelling through all this. Ended up going to prison, and I had to have a major surgery in prison because a piece of metal was sticking out of my mouth, and they wouldn't give me medical care at first because in prison, many people say like, hey, like I'm hurting, I'm sick, and help me take care of me. They tend not to believe people until they saw a piece of metal
Mm,
sticking out of my mouth, and they took me and rushed me to surgery. So yeah,
wow.
after I got out, I kind of got back in the same lifestyle. Honestly, I'm not really the type of person you can kick or scare or punish into changing. It has to come from within. And
Okay.
as I started getting back in the lifestyle, one day, my father, who I always butted heads with, came to me and he said, Rocky, you're not at home anymore. You're not asking for money anymore. Maybe you should get out of this life, or maybe just go out of the country. I'll pay for you to leave the country and spend some time somewhere. And something came in me, a higher power, a greater energy said, you know what, Rocky, like it's time. Let's get away from this. Let's leave behind the identity you have for yourself of dope boy, party animal, drug dealer, all the identities you put on yourself that I was learning to accept. Actually, I was in a certain sense proud of because it was my identity. And I let go of all of it, my friends, my girlfriends, the circles I was in. And I said goodbye. And I said, I don't know I'm coming back. I'm on a one-way ticket. I will see you guys at another time.
Where did you
I went,
go?
I went to India actually.
And that again. Okay.
Went to
All right.
India as an adult for the first time and stayed there. And I was living a clean lifestyle, living on a farm for a while, until one day I realized I need to do something. I need to have a job or a career or a business. And I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to work for myself. I know how hard it is to look for a job now as a felon. So I pulled out a little piece of paper that I had made, a one-page business plan while I was in prison. And this business plan didn't have a name. It just said Human Hair Company. It had some drawings and illustrations. And we used to use a cell phone, a snuck-in cell phone in prison to call out and find out prices for the market and find out what to do and what we need in order to run this hair business. So I gave it a shot, and I made one Facebook post. And all my homegirls from high school were like, "Oh my God, Rocky, you have hair? Give us a call, bring it to us, let's do it."
Yeah.
And that was about 7, 8 years ago. And it's been quite a journey. These things don't just happen. It's not just a linear. You start doing good, you change your life, and boom, it's all good. I had a lot of ups and downs in the meantime, but I never stopped. I never looked back, and I never gave up. I never went back. I told myself I would never sell drugs again. I would never be in that lifestyle, and I have, stayed away from that lifestyle very, very easily. Actually, like once I made that decision in my mind, like to tell people, once you frame your mind and change it, and you're set on it, you can change your entire world. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't think that before. Before when I was in this identity, I was just like, this is who I am. I'll never be anything more. I'll always have this. I'll always be this. I never really saw a bigger picture. But, once I changed that mindset, I was like, oh wow, it's funny that I actually thought that that's all I could do. Like that I got out of prison and thought I was going to be in the same circles and do the same things. It's almost a joke. Like when you look back at it, you're like, wow, like it's actually easy. It's easier said than done at the same time. But actually making that mind shift, really, really focusing on internalizing it, getting rid of distractions of music, TV, and people in your life, and really making those decisions in your mind, um, and keeping it over time. The power of that is phenomenal, especially when you keep that in your heart and your mind and in your focus for any amount of time, even months. It starts to really, really shift, and then not to mention, 6, 7 years of really focusing on that has brought my life to a place where I never thought or imagined, honestly, it could be. I actually had an ex-wife I met at that time, now ex-wife. It was a tough time with her relationships. I had ups and downs. I was still leaning on alcohol and drugs at times, too heavily, um, you know, scared to face the facts of who I am and what I'm becoming and what my past was about. I was even scared to share about things like this for so long because of two reasons. One, my parents, they're like, oh, you're an Indian kid, like, don't talk about this, hush, hush, forget it's in the past, get over it. And two, I didn't want to lose business. And everyone told me if you start telling people this is how you started the business, what you're doing, you're going to lose business. People don't want to work with you. So finally, one day, about a year or so ago, I started sharing it with a small couple of clients, and they were so motivated and inspired by it that I was like, you know what? If I can't be myself and talk about this, about how I started and why I started the business, to everybody and my clients in the world in general, then maybe this isn't the right thing for me to do. So I just say, you know what, I'm going to do it. I started talking about it to everybody, and I love it because even my clients, and I love them, like people I'm already trying to help, they come to me like, wow, Rock, we've been following you for a year or two. We didn't know this. And literally just push the right button for me. You really inspired me. I have a similar background, a similar story. My baby's father is in prison, or I got in trouble for this and I can't get a job. And I see you see you made it. I see you did it with your business, and I know I can do it also. And that's the goal,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I mean, that's the reason that I invited you on the show, because I know that you have something that you can impart to someone, um, um, uh, to shed some light on that. So a couple of things I want to circle back to, is that you didn't stop what you were doing until you were ready. A lot of parents, a lot of counselors and a lot of psychologists and everything, would be talking to kids and men or women or whatever, and they never change. They never change until they are ready to change. And you see, your father was trying to send you to these boot camps and he was trying to do something for you, and you endured all that suffering and pain and never changed. And then all of a sudden, one day, he actually got through to you by saying something as simple as, hey, you know what? Maybe you should go to India and start over and get a new identity. Maybe it's time. And right then, it was time. It's just like people go to church. They go to church and something the minister says or the preacher says, get to them, or God, like you said, a higher power, um, uh, convinces them. And immediately they stop doing all the things that they were doing or they didn't want to do. So that was great. So that when you decided to change, you changed. And the other thing that I want to, highlight is, when you said that you didn't want to talk about it, and one of the things as you were talking, I was struck by was your honesty when you said, you did everything, you sold drugs, you stole, you robbed, or whatever. And that is very freeing to be able to say, because a lot of people don't say that. But people actually connect with you more when you're transparent. You know what I mean? I had a similar situation. I wrote a book when I was 40 about childhood sex abuse that I had. And for all those years, I was so ashamed to tell that story. In fact, even when I wrote the book, I wouldn't even promote it because I didn't want anybody to know it was me. And then as soon as I start telling that story, I became freer. And now I don't have any shame attached to it. So and that's basically why God allows you to have a test or to go through these things so that you can help someone else on the other end of that's listening to and that's why podcasts have become so popular because people come on and they share their story and it inspires someone else sees that it can be done and it's powerful. So um uh, but I want to ask this particular question before we forget about it. So you were in prison, I think you said, for 7, 8 years. And then you said that when you came out of prison, you went back into the same lifestyle. So tell me what you think prison did for you, if anything.
So I was in prison, like an actual prison, for about 2 years, then jail for a year, then rehab for a year, then house arrest for 2 years. So it was like a 7, 8 year thing altogether with different kind of levels of getting punishment. Prison. What did prison do for me? Um, and I have trouble saying this because it sounds so like a paradox. I learned so much in prison. There's people going to prison with different attitudes, different ideas, different wants and needs, and things like that. I kind of went in there as an open book. I went in there as an adaptable chameleon. The way I've been institutionalized since I was 11, so I knew it was going to be another institution. I knew there were certain things I had to do and be and navigate those fine lines between judges and COs and cops and counselors and convicts and inmates and this and that. But I didn't really have any troubles. Like I had a pretty decent level of respect as soon as I got there. People were first and foremost curious. What is this Indian kid doing in a prison in Alabama? Because we've never seen him in here before. On top of that, I spoke Spanish, and I played basketball and stuff. So I was very easy to transfer between a lot of race wars in Alabama in prisons. So I was easily able to go between white and black and Mexican and hang out with everybody. I quickly developed a sense of wanting to help. That's always come from my heart. So I started writing motions for people in prison to reduce their sentences, to get small, movements around camps that they didn't know how to do. People didn't know how to read and write, a lot of them, and they just really needed me to help out a bit. I began teaching GED as well as a substance abuse program in prison as well. So
Really?
yeah,
That's
I did as
beautiful.
much. I did a lot in there. On
Okay.
top of, I also got back into selling while I was in prison. Also, so I was like selling drugs in prison while I was teaching classes and this and that. It was crazy.
How do you sell drugs in prison? Someone obviously snuck it in for you, or what?
So eventually, you get a job on that in a certain area of the prison, and in those areas where the prisons are vulnerable, basically you meet someone that's on your job that is, for lack of a better term, like they're gay, and they're happy putting substances inside of their uh, butt area and putting inside of them, and they would sneak it in for you, go to the back of the prison camp, take it all out, clean it, put it in a certain area, tell you where it is, you go pick it up and then bag it up and then redistribute it. It's a whole different world inside prisons. I learned, like, I'm smiling when I say it because I'm looking back on it now.
Oh
Back
my
then it was
God.
very, like, it was nerve wracking. Like, it was very scary because if you got caught, you're in big trouble. But those things I learned in prison, like the time I had with myself to write, read, journal, and plan, really, really helped me out. Actually, I started, like I said, this business based on the plans I made while I was in prison. Beyond that, like I was saying before, just people in prison that you go in and you have a certain amount of time, and you're like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna just violate, gamble, have fun, get on the phone as much as I can, and ride this prison sentence out. Me, I was from day one. Now I've been looking back at my journals, and I'm actually releasing a book with my journals in it. I started planning. I was like, I might get out in 6 months. I'll get out in 2 years. What is it going to be? How am I going to make this look? And when you really do take your time while you're there to really like set goals, set a future up for yourself, when you get out, you're already a step ahead versus the person that just closed their eyes, got high the whole time, had fun, did their time in prison, and got out and just, okay, I'm back in the real world now. So I saw that. I see that very clearly because I'm in touch with quite a few people that I was in prison with back then. The ones of us that were planning and doing things, whether or not their plans were criminal or not, the fact that they used that time to plan and to make things, how to make their life how they wanted to in the future, those people are actually doing that right now. And there's only three of them, including myself, that I can actually think of people that planned what they wanted to do, they got out, and they started putting that together. So that's a huge thing. Is like once you get to that certain point in your life, you made those mistakes. There's not much you can do to get out of it. You're not gonna escape out. You know, someone's not gonna fly in a helicopter and get you out. The judge is not gonna all of a sudden release you. You need to really accept it, and start preparing it in the best way you can. And you know, it really is a shift of mind because before you get there, before you get your time, you're trying to get out. You're worried about this and that, and then once you get there, you have it. And you need to shift your mind into like, okay, like time to make something useful this time. Just like COVID, all of us as humanity were forced to say we can't do certain things. What can we do with this time we have now? And on the backer end of COVID, now we're seeing that businesses and companies and people that were able to do like, you know, a little bit more this time, whether it's a new business, whether it's to double down on their own business, whether it's to just stick it through and not give up. They're, you know, going to start reaping the rewards more and more from that now because it's such an important thing, planning and preparing and framing your mind, you know, when you're in a tough situation to be able to be on the other side of it because it will pass. Situations I've learned in my life, the worst of the worst, from sexual abuse to physical to being stuck in a boot camp to being stuck in jail to being under deathbed, things get better. Time makes it better and it will pass. It's all about what you're doing to do with that time during and after when you have the ability to start over again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's right. Like again, it's mindset. The show is called Transform Your Mind, and that's basically what happened. You know, the reason that I believe that, I don't know what it is now, but I'm pretty sure in the beginning when they facility, they started this thought of, you know, punishing someone by sending them away for a couple of years, it was so that they can change their life and do something constructive and when they come out. But just like you said a minute ago, you can go in there and get worse because drugs are still selling in there. You got sometimes to fight for survival, and you send someone in there that's innocent and they come out worse than when they come in. Or you can go in there and you can actually you get your GED, like you were saying that some of the guys are wanted to get education. They can also go to school, learn a trade, and do whatever. And those are the people, like you've said, that when they come out, they're saying, okay, I've spent my time, I never ever want to go back in there, it was a horrible experience, and I'm going to do something with my life. So um, do you said there's only 3 people that that have done that. What is the statistics of how many people reform from prison? Do you have it?
I believe our recidivism rate in America is close to 70%, which is horrible. You know,
Okay. All
70%
right.
of all prisoners that go through those doors are going to go through them again.
They
And I
do.
was almost one. I got locked up twice after I got out of
Okay.
prison and sat in Metro jail, almost going back to prison 2 times for almost a month total. So it's very easy to get like the system is, to be truthful, the inside of the system is almost made to make you and allow you to mess up so you can go right back and serve more time. You really, really, really have to. One, I was blessed for one. Like there was someone guiding me and allowing me to still mess up and still end up not back in prison because I was very close. I was almost gone again. But on top of that, like you have to have a mind shift change. When we get caught up in those identities, when you're in the middle of selling, doing, partying, that's you. You are, whether it's a bad thing or not, you know that, but it's your identity. You can't you. We want to hold on to those identities so strongly because without them, we're broken. We don't know who we are. So it's a
Mm,
very tough mind shift and change, but it's very very doable as well. And it's literally starts with, like you said earlier, you have to want it. If you want it,
yeah.
if you want something different, you can get it for sure. But you have to actually want it, and it starts
Yeah.
with that wanting it. You know, there's definitely a journey and healing and steps and growth in between there. But
Good.
the very beginning is wanting it personally, internally.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's good. And one of the things that helps is sounds like you've got good parents. Your father was always there for you. Seems that he's got a little bit of money. because he's able to financially help you out. And that's why I asked you about, your parents. Now you rebelled because they were strict, but it was always somebody that you can fall back on. And he sent you with India again, and say, hey, change your life. And then you were lucky enough to be in um, uh, the atmosphere, for want of a better word, where the weave and the Indian hair stuff was booming. You know what I mean? I have used. In fact, I don't weave anymore, but I used to weave for years, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the Indian hair because that's the good hair. You know what I mean? So you were lucky to um, uh, be a part of that industry. That's the word. So yeah. So tell us how you. I know you said that you started planning your business while you're in prison, and then you went to India and you made a business plan. So touch a little bit on how you did that. Now, one of the things I want to say before you do that is because my first pastor would always say that the drug dealers on the street, if you take them in the corporate world, they'll do very well because they're entrepreneurs. And I see right here is an example of that. So talk on that.
I couldn't agree more. I've tried so hard to get my friends to get online with what I'm doing, because it's very. I even it sounds horrible in a way, but I almost sometimes when I'm talking to someone that I know knows the lifestyle, I'll even relate drug terminology and trade to the hair business and let that. And they're like, "Oh, I get it, Rob. So when you break up a couple ounces, it's worth this per price, and you're going to sell for X amount." And I look at them and the way they put the numbers together, I'm like, "Bro, you have the business right there in your heart. You're just directing it towards the wrong thing, just like I
Yeah.
was. Make
Yeah.
it legit, make it legal. It takes a little bit more time. It takes more systematic effort. It takes more organization. It takes following tax laws and getting things set up in order. But none of that is hard, and I guarantee you can do it because I've watched you do it with the little leafy green substance and the little white powdery substance. You do it all the time. Just use a legal product, and you can change your life with it. And that's what I did in the very beginning. I saw it the same way too. I'm going to buy a product, I'm going to make it good, and I'm going to sell it for higher. I'm going to package it nicely and sell it for higher. I didn't know what else to do besides that. But while I was in India, I had time to meet manufacturers, to rent a car and go to the temple, really go to all small markets where they're selling it and really do a lot of research. So I like to say that everything happens for a reason. I never thought I'd be in here. I never thought I'd be in India after prison. I never thought I would be where I am today. It all kind of just has flowed together properly, and it's really allowed me to accept the troubling times in my life and the times when I'm really sad and low, as it's all part of the process. So while I was there, it all kind of started falling into place. Within a week, I had made the name, paid for the domain. I made that Facebook post, and I was like, let's just do it. And I started learning. I had the ability to learn from an Indian perspective at the manufacturing side before I got to learn about the market in the U.S. So this injury that happened to me, the state of Alabama told my father that your son is a convicted felon. He wasn't supposed to be where he was, so we're not pressing charges against the kids that did it to him. So my
Wow.
dad said, okay, we're going to press civil charges then. So we sued civilly in court, ended up winning out of court. And that money, what happened to me here, is the money that I used to start the hair business as well. I asked my dad
Okay.
for it, and I said, I need to buy a product. I need to get this company running. And, that's what the money I want to use. And like for a year, 2 years, I was teaching tennis while I was doing the hair business. I didn't make. I remember 7 years ago when I would make, not even make, when I would sell for $3,000 in 1 month. I'd be like, oh, like $3,000. Like, like now I couldn't even sustain my business if I did 3,000 in 1 month. I'd have to do way beyond that to even turn over, pay bills and pay rent and everything like that as well.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, when you have that, like, I think Wayne Dyer talks about it, like, a lot, like that burning desire inside you, that effort, that hustle. You can do anything. Like, you literally can do anything, and that's
Talking
what
about
I
the
think.
power of intention.
Exactly, the power of intention. Have that in you, you go forward with it, and I truly believe. I think maybe Robin Sharma says this, like, about how little small, and Tony Robbins as well, small baby steps of progress each day. The power of that over time, and I know this now personally. I've seen it. is just incredible. Baby steps, even 10 minutes every day on one focused subject, on one focused business, the power of that after time, it's just magnifies. You don't get just 10 minutes, 10, 20, 30 minutes. It doesn't add like that. It's almost exponentially. You get like a 10 to the 10th power every single time you do it. It
Right.
adds on. And that's been, key for me in my growth and my learning, both personally and in business as well.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, it sounds like you follow the self-improvement space too. You've touched on three of my favorite people: Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Robin Sharma. It's really interesting that Robin Sharma actually started me on my journey to becoming a life coach and self-improvement with his book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. I'm sure you've read that, right?
Keep going, keep going.
That's what started me. My sister was so enamored with that book that she would buy it and give it to everybody. And she gave me a book, and I started, and yeah, India's a great, great place for a whole bunch of things, whether it's self improvement, whether it's, religion, whether it's meditation. I talk about going to India and going to an ashram all the time. It's one of my dreams and goals or whatever. So it's great. So you had foundation, and you chose to rebel against it for a significant part of your life, but then you came back, and now you're proud of what you were able to transition to. You transitioned into having a great business. You're obviously doing manufacturing, so you're not just wholesaling, right? You're manufacturing. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I go to the temples and the factory at least twice a year. So I'm very connected to the source. I'm very connected with the factory. I have my brother there. I have, different family members and friends there as well.
Okay, so that's great. Yeah, awesome. All right, well, yes, very, very impressed that you were able to transition into a business, because a lot of times when you're a felon, you really have to work for yourself because nobody wants to give you a chance. Um, and you talked about the fact that even though your conviction was 10 years ago, they wouldn't remove it from your record. Yeah, and as far as I know, um, unless I don't know, so I shouldn't talk on it. But yeah, I think that in some states you can try to get it expunged, but I don't know if they do or not. So I'll leave that topic alone. So
Hopefully one day. Like,
what was that?
I'll saying hopefully one day. I hope I can actually get this. But I mean, honestly, now after 10 years, I've realized it's not affecting me for my apartment searches, for my rentals, for banking as much. But it's still there, and I would, I've worked my butt off the last 10 years to really put distance between me and that time of life. So I'd really, really be grateful for the opportunity to get that off my record one day. And I believe it'll happen one day. I see the countries, everything is shifting. Things are starting to change a little bit here and there. Where we as people are pushing for change now, like harder than I think we ever have in generations that I remember in the past. So, I mean, I was able to vote. I actually got to vote. I didn't think I
Oh,
could.
that's
I was
awesome.
so scared.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not sure if I can have this background, but like, oh, sure, you're allowed to vote. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Some states are allowing it. My daughter works for a nonprofit in DC, and that's actually one of her things. One of her projects is allowing felons to vote in the election. So yeah, I know that because I follow it with her, that a lot of states allowed voting. I'm not sure Florida, which is where I'm at, if that's one of the states that allow it. So that's good. Yeah, but you're right. A lot of people are fighting towards allowing felons to have a life, because you talked about the fact that 70% of them go back to prison, and that's because they can't find work. And if they can't find work, then they're going to go back to selling drugs or robbing or doing all the things. And so, yeah, you're very right that we're moving towards a society that says that when you do your time, that you should be forgiven, and be able to have a life. And if they put 10 years, which is, I think that's a good time, because that allows them to see if you are going to go back to do the same thing that you were doing before. Because if you are, then you would do it in 10 years. You're not going to wait for 15 years and then start over. So yeah, I think that 10-year barometer is enough, because you're right. If you've got, felon, then you're right. Things like your banking, things like housing, things like even going in a condo. You can't even rent in a condo,
Yep.
and yeah. So I'm glad that you have hope for that happening, and so that you can have a full life, but not just a half of a life. So, before we wrap up, I think you mentioned that you were working with other felons, and also working in the community to prevent, the youth from becoming felons. So, what is it that you're doing in that space?
So I work with a couple of nonprofits around LA, but I mean, I've really started speaking since COVID has started. I've started like actually getting out there. My goals for the future are to be able to start getting around to more and more areas. I truly believe that, like we were saying earlier, that people are gonna change when they want to change. So I don't want to go try to force change. I want to go share my experience and my motivation and my strength, and tell kids and adults too, like, look at the story I have. It's not your normal story. I didn't choose. I didn't wasn't forced to go in the lifestyle I did. I actually chose the crazy
Yeah,
lifestyle back then, and I actually learned from it and actually grew from it. And actually, that's who I was. That was who I was, and I've gotten beyond it. And I have had help. I've been had a good foundation, but also I had a lot of stages along the way where I was totally alone, where I didn't have anybody to lean back or fall back on, and I had to fall back on myself. And I really feel like there's some tools, and there's some words, and there's some small things that I can kind of share, especially with people that are in prison getting out, or the youth.
yeah,
They can implement in their own lives, and start to see the change for themselves, and realize, like, wow, I can do a lot more than I was giving myself credit for. Let me go ahead
yeah,
and do it.
yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good. Hey, God is working through you. All right. So tell our listeners how they can get a hold of your hair, and I don't know if you do any kind of speaking engagements or any of that stuff. So tell them about your business, and how they can get in touch with you.
Got it. So my main business is Hair Made in India. Hair Maiden, Maiden, India. The website is hairmaidenindia.com. We're on every bit of social media, from YouTube to Pinterest to Twitter to Facebook to Instagram to everything, at Hair Made in India. You can even Google us and find us very easily. My personal blog is rockykandola.com. That's ROCKYKANDOLA.com. On that, you'll have my blog and links to all my past podcast episodes. You'll have all the businesses that I currently run, from my hair company to my CBD company to my vacation rental property company, all on the same website. You can check
Good
it
for
all out.
you.
And
Where is
also,
your vacation
um,
rental properties?
it's in Sandestin, Florida, actually. It's
Good
Sandestin. So,
for you. Quite a businessman. All right. Keep
yeah.
going. All
And
right.
uh, and yeah, so I mean, everything is on that website, rockykandola.com. I'm currently putting some books together, and once I do those together, I will make a speaker page and start reaching out to people as the world starts to open up, where I can actually go. Because I love the Zoom things, but I'm way more of an in person. My energy, my vibe, and when I'm right there with you, like, I can feel yours and you can feel mine. Like, I love that face to face stuff. So I really hope that early next year I can start getting to high schools, to prisons. Even, like, I
Yeah.
talked to my girlfriend, I was like, I don't mind taking the first effort and step in the beginning to fly myself to different places, to just be able to share and start this journey, because I love my business, I love what I do. But doing this, talking about this, and hopefully having people talk to me about it also, is really what fills my heart up, is really where I find fulfillment, and like true fulfillment and actualization as a person. So I'm just going to keep doing more and more of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about, fulfillment. That when you're helping people, in fact, they're saying that service is the only way that you can actually get fulfillment. So that's awesome. Now, I got the rockycandola.com. So you said hair made is not MADE, or is
No,
it
it's
MAID?
MAIDEN, hair.
MAID. Okay.
And
All
quick
right.
secret, if you type in MADIN, we bought both domains, so it'll transfer there anyway. But the
Okay.
proper spelling is MAIDEN.
That's smart. That's smart. Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you for coming on the show and being so transparent, filling us into what happens in prison, what happens, when you come out of prison, the fact that 70% of people go back in prison. So obviously the system is not doing what it's intended to do. And hopefully with our new administration and Kamala, then we can, turn the corner on on this prison thing. I know that's one of her mandates, that we punish people and then we create an avenue for them to do better in the future, not to go back. You know what I mean? Because that's just prison for profit, which is what a lot of people say. That's what's happening right now. So thank you so much for being transparent. Thank you for being so forthright and forthcoming in our conversation. And yes, so anybody that's listening or watching on YouTube, they know that they can head over to blog.myhelps.us. I would have a transcript of our conversation, and I would have links to your websites, here madeinindia.com and rockykandola.com. And yeah, and on the website as well, you would find links to the sponsors for this particular show. I encourage you guys to support the advertisers who support the show, and definitely support, Rocky. I mean, this show airs in Atlanta, and probably 90% of the women in Atlanta are using weaves. So it's a good market for your hair product.
I know all about Atlanta, but tell them, give me a call. I can keep them away from those underground Chinese shops in 5 Point. Give me a call. I'll take care of them.
So that's all right. All right. So Warner, thank you guys for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio show. This is an episode on how you can actually, change your mindset about crime and about drugs and about doing all those things and become a contributing member to society. It's actually quite fulfilling when you do it that way. The other way is just quick money. It's very painful life. So, try to do the right thing, and then, you have a happier life. So want to remind you guys to, if you're listening on iTunes and you haven't done so yet, subscribe, rate, and review. That allows the podcast to reach a wider audience. I want to invite you guys to join my private Facebook group called Life Coach. On there, we have a lot of life coaches that give inspirational messages, daily, including myself. And yes, my YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're not watching it on YouTube, head over to YouTube so you can see Rocky. You can't ever tell that he had a fake jaw. I mean, it's beautiful work. Yeah, and see that nice smile. So yeah, want to invite you guys to subscribe to the Transform Your Mind podcast YouTube channel. And yeah, so any last words, Rocky, as we sign off?
Thank you for anybody out there listening. Thank you so much. And give me a call. Reach out to me. I'm a real person, and I would love to hear your story, talk to you about it, and we can start growing and getting better and healing together, guys. Just give me a call. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Awesome. You're welcome. I like that, touching your heart. Now, I will end by saying namaste. Thank you.